On air.
On air. Look at that.
We're good.
Cool. Let's do it. Hey guys.
Wow. Welcome to BRCO 499 and welcome to Sarah Menzies. You guys are in for a treat today. Sarah graduated in 2007. You started when this building was brand new.
Yeah.
We asked you to come here because of the amazing work that you're engaged in now as an alumna, specifically the Afghan Cycles project.
Yes.
How on earth did a nice young lady from Bellingham go halfway across the world to tell that story?
Yeah, I think my loved ones ask the same question, how I ended up in Afghanistan. Just through, I think, just the power of good friends and colleagues and the power of good storytelling. I found this team that was riding bikes out there, and most of my filmmaking at this point has been character-driven, passion-driven stories. So hearing about these girls, I feel like they're the perfect example of that. So after hearing about them, I think within an hour of learning about them, I was already booking a ticket and building my dream team and ready to go.
Were you with Let Media at that time? Yeah,
so I formed Let Media, it was around 2012. Up until then, I had another business venture with a colleague, and then I had about some time where I was just Sarah Menzies' girl with the camera. And I felt like I wanted to be marketing something that wasn't just me, and be able to make something out of it that I could have a little bit of separation from.
You said you were doing character-driven pieces. What kinds of things were you doing at the beginning?
Yeah, all kinds of things. I've been drawn to people who dedicate their lives to making this world better. And so I'd done some stories about a woman that is doing work in Afghanistan. That's how I came across the Afghan Cycles project. I've just been following people. Yeah, I think when most people take a right at the turn, I like following those that go the other way and are paving their own path. And so yeah, I've done a film about a woman who's trudging through snow to chase surf in northern Norway, of all places. I've done films of people doing restoration work in places that you'd never even dream of, or sailing across an ocean, just following a team of activists studying plastic pollution. I mean, I think, for one, I've always been drawn to adventure and wanting to see the world and share stories, but for me, where I connect with it is obviously like the human side of it.
You found out about the Afghan cycling team from another contact who was working over there already. What was it about their story that made you think, man, I gotta get on this project? Totally,
yeah. I think, well, when I heard about the team, I didn't know, not much was known about them in general. So my colleague there she's ridden her bike there for years and was like, oh, I finally found women riding there. And all I really knew about Afghanistan was that women, I didn't think, could really do anything, let alone get on a bike, which means putting something between your legs. It's giving them a vehicle that offers up independence, freedom of mobility. So even just hearing girls on bikes in Afghanistan went against everything that I thought of as a woman in Afghanistan.
It seems like it would go against everything a woman in Afghanistan had been told as long as she'd been alive.
Exactly. So I think and honestly, like the visuals I was getting just in this early conversation, I was thinking, I've got to go over there and make a film. And my roots are in the outdoor industry, so when I had the idea of making a film, I was thinking cycling film with this awesome backdrop being Afghanistan, I thought maybe 20 minutes, 30 minutes tops, but I landed in Kabul, and within an hour I was meeting a couple of the girls. I remember sitting across the room from them, just looking at them, and I don't know, we have a translator, I don't know what, I'm hearing everything secondhand, but just looking at these three girls, they were warriors, they were so strong, and they looked like me, like in high school, playing soccer, playing sports. They weren't covered up. I mean, they had headscarves on, but I feel like I went in with a lot of, unfortunately, a bias, and I kind of had this preconceived notion of what an Afghan woman would look like and what she would talk about. And sitting across from these women, I knew this is going to be a deeper story. I'm in over my head. This isn't going to be
in over your head.
Well, it wasn't going to be a film that the short cycling film that would do great in the outdoor film festival circuit that I am rooted in. You know, I knew this is going to be a cultural piece. Cycling is going to tie these stories together, but I knew pretty quickly I want to watch these girls grow up. You know, I want to see, here they are as teenagers, where are they in a couple years, and be able to see them a few times a year, you know, and so I knew that after that first production, I realized that was probably just a scouting trip and relationship building, and that's how it's unfolded. I've watched these girls, you know, they're starting university, they're starting their careers, they're getting married, and all the while, you know, seeing how does the bicycle fit into their lives, how are they breaking cultural barriers, gender barriers, to be able to do what they love. So to answer your original question, what was it about their story? It's just that they are doing something that society is saying you can't do, but they love the way that the wind feels on their face when they're on the bike. They love the freedom they get when they're on the bike, and I love getting to watch them experience that.
I think it's worth detailing a little bit more about the notion of the taboo against Afghan women riding a bicycle. You, in one of your the pieces that I saw of Afghan Cycles, you're watching boys and men ride their bicycles while young girls are walking to school, sometimes miles and miles.
Oh yeah, I mean, the bicycle is very common in Afghan culture. I mean, it's especially in a place like Kabul. I mean, it's a huge city. There's, you know, it's a metropolitan area. Granted, the roads are mostly dirt, but there's tons of traffic, and yeah, it's probably quicker to get somewhere by bike. But that, you know, men and boys are the ones that get to do that. You don't see a woman commuting by bike in Kabul.
What are they told as far as the reason why men can and women can't?
That's an interesting, I'm not sure that there's that many women asking, so they're not really being told anything. You know, it's just more, that's what men do. Yeah. And then if they're being told, I think that if a girl asks her father or brother or husband, can I ride a bike? The biggest controversy is, well, other women aren't doing it, and that's going to separate you from the crowd, and you're going to stand out, and therefore you're a target. So this was a question I've been asking for years, is what is it that makes it so taboo? And honestly, the most common answer is, well, no one else is doing it, so I don't want my daughter to do it and stand out. But obviously, I mean, there's plenty of other undertones and undercurrents that make it taboo as well.
There's a war going on in Afghanistan, Sarah. Your parents and I are very concerned about you. Were you concerned about yourself at all?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's this perception, like perceived danger. You know, I'm more nervous in the weeks leading up to a production as I'm watching the news or I'm following along on what's going on than I am when I'm in country. And I think my loved ones feel the same way. Like they're not, like, so as soon as I get there, that danger, you know, shifts. Like suddenly seeing someone walking the streets with an AK-47, you realize, like, oh, they're protecting me. Or not, I mean, they're not there with me, but they're keeping this block safe. So I shouldn't be scared of them, you know, but it is an interesting, okay, so the girls are riding bikes in more progressive parts of the country. So if I was down in like Kandahar, which is, you know, a Taliban-run province, a girl getting on a bike is a death wish. There's just no way she would even have that thought, let alone act it out. So I'm also in places that are safer. So we're following two different teams in Kabul. Again, the girls aren't, there's one team we're following that they're trying to ride more frequently just for commuting, but the national team, they're get out of the city for their training rides and stuff like that. We're also filming out in Bamiyan, which is notoriously like the safest province in Afghanistan. So it's really only taking off in places that are progressive and, you know, where you're seeing women coming out of the burqa and they're, you know, where their fathers or mothers, you know, everyone is supporting them, telling them you're the future of this country. You know, we want you to succeed and set a, you know, like make this country better. But yeah, again, I could be in other parts. Like I'm not going to the dangerous parts because there's not girls riding bikes there.
You said that you always like to tell stories about people who are actually doing something and making a difference.
Yeah.
And in my you know, Jesuit indoctrinated brain, I'm kind of hoping the Gonzaga experience had some influence in that process.
Oh, hands down, yeah. I mean, I think, yeah, my experience here at Gonzaga was definitely, I mean, that's where it all comes from, is this connection to something bigger than ourselves. And I always, you know, I initially wanted to get into film as a tool for social justice and for opening people's minds to something that they hadn't seen before, experienced before. And to me, film is how I relate to that. I know some people get that through music or through something written, but for me, it's always been, I'm a visual person. So yeah, Gonzaga, I mean, I think being here, I can rattle off a list of things that my closest friends from Gonzaga are doing, and it's so cool. You know, they're teaching, they're traveling, they're heading up NGOs right now, or, you know, they're all so engaged in the global community, and I think that's really unique. My friends, you know, post Gonzaga, I don't know, they're all doing cool stuff too, but I think I've realized, having left Gonzaga, how unique this community is, and I love bragging about all the cool things my friends are doing.
Yeah, and we love bragging about you too, and that's why I asked you to come and talk to a group of broadcasting students who are getting ready to graduate and hopefully do great things like you are. It can't be easy just getting everything over there that you'll need to gather your information. Yeah, I mean, well, the thing that makes that easier is that I don't want to be drawing any attention to what we're doing. So I'm not bringing, you know, like a jib. I'm not, you know, like the things that I might do on a commercial shoot back at home, or even, you know, short documentaries, like outdoor industry type stuff, adventure films. It's fun to like test the boundaries and like get epic, beautiful shots when you can. But when you're in Afghanistan, like when my translator and our fixer who gets everything lined up and, well, yeah, is doing the communicating for us, when he tells me it's safe, take your time, you know, maybe I'll run a time lapse or I'll get something more set up. But when he says you have 8 seconds to get this shot, you know, I'm getting everything looking good in the camera while I'm in the van, run out, get the shot, and run back in if it's needed. It seems like there's a story there. Was there a point where your fixer said, you better get that thing fast because we need to skedaddle? Yeah, oh yeah, there's definitely times. That's the perceived danger stuff. You know, when I talk about it, then I realize, yeah, Sarah, that's a little weird. But when you're there, that's just your new normal, you know? So some of those memories get a little, I guess you get a little jaded. Can you share one of those memories? I was there this October, and we were going to film, I guess it was a press conference. There's a lot of weird political stuff going on between the sports committee and the Olympic committee in Kabul. Oops, excuse me. And the long story short, we'd gone to this press conference where the national team would be saying a few words, and it was really busy. My gut was saying, like, this is bad. I don't want to be here. And it's at a really what's the right word? It was at a more conservative university. You know, it just was feeling like things weren't really lining up right. And we got through security, which is always multiple checkpoints, and you're getting patted down, and they're checking, you know, politicians are often killed by bombs in cameras, so they have to take your camera apart, then put the batteries back in, turn it on. You know, like you're like proving like this is a real camera. And so we get through this whole process, and our fixer says, okay, we're gonna go meet the girls outside. And me and the other filmmaker that was working with me, we said, hell no, you know, we just went through this. I'm not doing this again. They have them come through. And he said, no, we're going to go meet them outside. And we get out there, and he just below his breath says, or, you know, under his breath says, I just got 2 calls like within 30 seconds saying that there's going to be a car bomb here like any minute. So let's go home, or we'll go meet the girls somewhere else. And to me, my thought in that moment was, of course there's going to be a bomb here. Like, this is a huge target. Like, I didn't feel safe here anyways. But then I tell the story now, and I look at your face, and I hear people's reactions, and I think, yeah, that is bad. that's weird. And you just kind of, but when you're there, it's just a different. That becomes your normal, and you talk about it differently. And is the story that important to tell? That's a question I ask myself a lot, and especially leading up to productions. I've canceled tons of productions because of security. You know, so I really am not cavalier about it.
it's very well thought out, and I'm watching things very closely and keeping in touch with people. So when I do make the decision to go, I know that it's in a window of time that feels good. And that's based on a lot of different opinions, not just mine, because I've only been doing this for 3 years in Afghanistan. I rely on people's opinions that have either lived there as Afghans, as expats, or whatever. So I feel like I have a good team that can help me make those decisions. But yeah, is it worth it? I think it is. I think that the bike is, and this is something I would not have thought about 5 years ago. You know, before starting this film, I didn't have an opinion about it. But seeing what the bicycle can do for a woman in an oppressive society is pretty incredible. So, and this is their normal. These girls live this. I get to get on an airplane and go home.
Yeah.
You know, I come home to Seattle and live my nice, sheltered, safe little life. But this is what they live in every, you know, this is their daily life. Each girl can, you know, has a story of a family member or a loved one of some kind being at the wrong place at the wrong time. You know, like going to school is dangerous. Not because of school necessarily, but the walk from home to school. Like, so much could happen.
Yeah.
So that's where putting them on a bike is so much safer. They can do that quicker. They have independence. You get it out in the more rural areas. And it's something that can safely get them out of a bad situation fast.
Yeah.
So I don't even think, like, it's fun to follow the national team because their goals are more on the competitive side. But man, I love the story of the girls that are doing this. Like they're trying to make a cultural shift, which is to like make the image of a girl on a bike normal.
Tell us the story of one of the women that you've just really kind of fallen in love with and seen perhaps her blossom over the course of your production.
Oh my God. How much time do we have? I love each girl that we've been profiling for different reasons, you know, each one for different reasons. These days, I have a soft spot for this girl. Her name's Tahira. She lives out in Bamiyan, which is the mountainous area. If there's any tourism going on in Afghanistan, it's in Bamiyan. There's a ski team out there, which is pretty cool to see. Tahira is about 13 or 14. You know, age is sort of an interesting thing there.
Interesting.
Fluid, yeah. The coach of the national team has mysteriously gotten younger. While the girls, their ages go back and forth. But Tahira, she's a tomboy. She's very sweet. This look in her eyes. Like the second I saw her, I was like, we'll be following her. There was just something I can't quite put a finger on. Maybe it was just the smile she gave me when we locked eyes. We probably both started smiling. Yeah. So Bamiyan City isn't really a city. It's a town out there, but the town surrounding it, it's really rural, and that's where all the agriculture is coming from. Her parents live about an hour away, and they've sent her to Bamiyan City like for a better future. You know, she lives with her brothers there, and she's going to school. So she's this little middle schooler that is tough because she's growing up with her brothers. Her brothers have taught her how to ride, bought her first bike, and she got, I think, second place at a race that I filmed this, just a little province, like a race in their province this fall. And afterwards, they get money afterwards, which is it's great that it's a way that they can bring in a little extra money. And I got the camera all set up and said, okay, what are you gonna do with this money now? And I had no idea like how much it was. I didn't really understand like, in the moment I didn't know what we were talking about there money-wise, but just asked, what are you going to do with this? And I couldn't, she just rattles it all off in Dari. Like she can understand English, but would say it all in Dari, the language there. And I could make out words like computer, email, Facebook. And then once she tried to say it back in English, and I realized what she was saying is I'm saving any race I win, I'm saving money so I can have a computer, because it's really important for a woman to be able to have a computer and have access to the outside world. And Facebook got wrapped up in it.
Having a bike, right?
Yeah. So Facebook got wrapped up in it, but that wasn't like her main point. Right. It was like she wants to be a diplomat in China, and she wants to ride a motorcycle to her job, And I think she wants to be a judge, if I'm remembering right, in Afghanistan. I don't know, she's got a million dreams. I love her.
When we talked about this 3 years ago, you said, man, I just want people to notice what's going on there. And the movie hasn't even dropped yet, and they are taking notice. I mean, the world is taking notice.
It's pretty wild, yeah. Yeah, I mean, the bike itself was just nominated as, like, for the Nobel Peace Prize, and then these Afghan girls would be the recipients of it. And that's really cool to me to see that, because that's more in line with what we're doing with this film, of showing what the bike can do for girls. And I mean, in Afghanistan, but clearly there's like universal themes here in oppressive countries, or countries, well, not just, I mean, here too, like I think you give a girl a bike and she can do anything. Yeah. But yeah, so there has been a lot of press around it. I'm worried that by the time this film's finished, people are going to be sick of hearing about these girls. But I also think it works in our favor, because we've been following them. You know, a lot of what's coming out is just sort of half the story and like the glamorous side of it, without really getting into the nitty gritty.
I don't think anybody around here is going to get tired of hearing about Afghan Cycles. And
you guys
in fact,
will watch it. I can bring it here. You guys will.
You're kind of a rock star around here. You mentioned that there's a team helping you out with this film, but I'm curious about what your particular gift to the project is.
I don't know, that I've been able to pull my dream team together. I mean, the team, yeah, we've got, usually when I'm there filming, it's just me and one other person. And then, but then the team at home, like producers and stuff, executive producers, impact producers, like people, like what's our impact going to be with this? We've got a really good group of people. And yeah, that's a good question. I haven't really thought about that, Dan. What am I contributing to this? I think just the fact that I love these girls so much, and that I want to do their story justice. They've opened up their lives to me, and I'm so worried. My biggest fear is telling this story as a white Western woman. You know, that who am I to tell a story about like the struggles of an Afghan girl? That seems so silly and backwards. I shouldn't be the one telling this. So having that voice in the back of my head all the time that's saying you're the wrong person to tell this story is what makes me want to tell it, like, you know, so right.
Yeah. As we mentioned, of course, you're talking to a bunch of seniors who are getting ready to join the world of 21st century storytellers, and I bet they're going to have some questions for you as well. But what would you say is the biggest difference between Sarah in 2016 and Sarah when she was sitting in those chairs in the classes you took here? Oh, man.
I'll tell you one thing, I was a lot smarter when I was sitting in those chairs. I had the world figured out. I knew everything I needed to know. I left here pretty cocky. I left here like I can, you know, I think it's, you finish school and you think like, I got my bachelor's, my phone's gonna be ringing off the hook with job offers. And but that doesn't happen. So I don't know, I think early 20s, it's a humbling experience to realize, it's not like any one thing happened, just sort of I realized that I'm in a sea of many people that feel idealistic and feel like they can contribute something. So, so yeah, I think I was much older and wiser when I sat there, and now I feel like this little young gun that like is ready to learn everything.
Being their big sister, what would you say that the current seniors could do to enhance their prospects of having a clear, impactful voice like yours?
What can they do to, I think just put yourself out there. You know, I think one, keep shooting, keep editing, you know, even if no one's paying you for it, just do it, because you got to just keep getting better at it. And two, like don't be scared to put stuff out there, even if it's bad, or if you think it's bad. You know, you just got to, I think in this job, you've got to develop thick skin, because people don't always like what you do, or festivals don't always take it, or it doesn't get picked up by a distributor, whatever it is. Not everyone is going to connect with it. But so with that, you need to develop thick skin. So I'd say, did I answer the question? I get on these tangents and I forget what you asked.
No, and you know, one of the books I'm enamored with that I sometimes share with some students is called Art is Fear. And it takes a great deal of courage, I think, to say to yourself, well, I think they're going to love it. I think this is going to be impactful.
Yeah.
And I'll go ahead and stand up and say to everybody, watch my work.
Yeah.
And it takes guts.
Yeah. And also knowing, like, who are you making this film for? You know, does it really matter who's going to love it? You know, I have a pretty good feeling that, like, a lot of Afghan men are going to hate my film, and women. But I think that's fine. I'm sure a lot of conservatives are going to hate my film because it's like showing that not all Muslims are bad. I think there'll be plenty of people that have problems with it, and well, and a lot of, I don't know, I feel like most of the stuff I've done is pretty safe, like easy stuff. But that said, I've had films that do great in the festival circuit. I have films that, like even that same film might not get picked up by a festival, and I think, what do you mean? It's done great everywhere else,
right.
but doesn't fit with their programming or whatever. And that's what it comes down to. It's rarely about you or even about the work you did. It's whether or not it fits with what people are looking for. So yeah, I think that's it.
That's good.
Keep busting this stuff out, even if you've got to, I mean, if you're not making money on it, just keep building your portfolio, developing your craft, and what was the other thing I said? Oh yeah, just put it out there.
Yep. Be proud of it. Let's get some questions from the students out here.
Not all at once. Okay. Oh, you got a mic. Nice.
Yeah. We're fancy here. So, what is one of the biggest things that your experiences in Afghanistan has taught you or has changed you in a way?
Yeah. God, I mean the whole experience. Can I say that? I mean, really, I do think that. Let me think about that. I think honestly, for me, my biggest takeaway with this film has been this idea of like coming into a project and shedding all like preconceived notions or like perspectives. So I came into this thing honestly thinking of these girls as victims and thinking like, oh, these poor girls, like, yeah, I want to make this film to like help them. But I met them and realized these girls are strong. Like they don't need my help. They're doing this themselves. And I was pretty upset with myself that was my gut response. So I think, maybe that's not the answer you're looking for, like Afghanistan itself, but in terms of how I approach stories now or how I approach films now, it really is trying to shed any bias and just be a sponge and be open to anything.
That's good stuff. It's not cheap to do this. How are you? Do you need me to give you a couple of? How you doing? You're a professional filmmaker, but they need to know. That doesn't mean you're going to buy a new car and. Yeah,
I mean it's a funny question, right? Like you don't meet a plumber and say like, "Are you doing okay?" You know what I mean? Like it is funny how many people ask you about finances.
Have you ever hired a plumber?
Yeah, they're doing just fine. Well. Yeah, that's true. No, it is a funny thing that comes up often that about finances, but I get it. You know, you work for yourself. People always wonder about that. I mean, I do a lot of freelance work, so I'm able to take on. You know, a lot of people might direct or get into documentary, but they have like their, the bread and butter coming somewhere else. But yeah, I guess I've figured out what I need to survive, and I'm not like. I think I told you on the phone, I just met with my tax man, and he made it pretty clear that my business model isn't very good. And wondered, how have you been running a business this long? Mainly because of my disorganization, not because of the money coming in. But no, I think it is, I mean, I'm wearing all of the hats at Let Media. Every project I pull in the right people, and there's a lot of collaboration. But in terms of running my company, it's me, and I never wanted to be a business owner. That wasn't the plan. That was just a byproduct of doing this thing. So, so I mean, sometimes you take the jobs that are pretty humbling, and you think I can't believe this is what I'm doing right now, and this is ridiculous. Mm-hmm. And you're just thinking, I need this paycheck in order to go do whatever. But I don't know, I have fun. Like I think if I'm out in the field filming something, it could be on a topic that I don't care about, or it could be something that I could be selling a product that I don't use or care about or seems boring. But there's always creativity in it, and if you're lucky, you're working with people that are awesome. And so I guess I'm still dodging your question. Yeah, this is my year where I'm upping my day rate and like gonna pay myself better.
Well, I've seen your work. I think you're worth it. Anybody else?
Is a balance, though. It's not like you get into documentaries for the money. So you've got to either have a job outside of it to pay the bills, or be a freelance videographer, or editor, or do graphics, or whatever it is. Like there's always a balance.
Yeah, have something else on the side.
Sorry, a little sick.
Oh.
So this is kind of like a detailed question, but like how often do you go back and then like, and how often, like how long do you stay there?
Yeah.
And then also, what was my third? I had a third question. I'll remember it. Sorry.
Yeah. To Afghanistan?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I've gone back. I've actually only gone 3 times in the last 3 years. So I've gone about once a year with about half a dozen productions each year canceled. So just because of security, I would have loved to have gone back more, but sometimes also communication isn't always great. So I'll find out about something like, oh, they're doing a race in 5 days. I can't get there, but I'll hire someone locally. You know, I've got people there too that can do some pickups for me. Yeah, so I haven't been, yeah, I've just been there, I guess, once a year for the last 3 years, which isn't enough. I wish it could be more.
And so how long are you there each time?
Oh, about a month, give or take.
Oh, that's a long
time. Yeah, so I try and get a good chunk of time. Yeah.
What's your day like when you're in country?
In that country or this country?
In Afghanistan.
Oh, man.
I don't want to know what you do in Seattle.
It's pretty boring. It's very boring, actually. Getting a hunchback as I edit. Let's see. There is no typical day. I mean, a lot of, we'll time our travel around peak hours of transportation because, that's like when there's more targets on the road. That's like, we're just trying to mitigate risk as much as possible. So we'll either get a super early start or maybe start around 9 or 10, kind of depending on things. Yeah, and then I'll hang out. The first half of production was very much around, it was like interview, B-roll, and I don't know, I get really sick of watching documentaries in that format because, I don't know, you're just not connecting. It feels really forced. So the last 2 productions now, I've really tried to emphasize like more verite stuff and like the fly on the wall stuff. So when we prioritize that, the day could be anything. And that's what I keep trying to work with with our fixer. Like, I don't want to just set up another interview. We've got enough. Like, I can get interviews in the field too. I want to see these girls and like follow them in their day to day. So it involves going to school with them, going and like cooking a meal with them, going to the market with them, going on a training ride with them.
I appreciate how you said one of the things that has changed about you is a recognition of your own bias. And I'm wondering if anything has changed about your storytelling style, because you were a very good videographer here, and now I look at your work and it's stunning. It's gorgeous. Have you noticed anything else about your style that's changed?
Yeah. I think editing changed my style. In the early days, oh man, I'd try and edit something I shot and would just be cringing. I couldn't do it. And I'd just say, like, where was your tripod? Why was it that hard to put your camera on a tripod? And thinking I was so cool going handheld, and it just is, the shots are useless. At least for me, what I'm looking for.
I'm going to play that one back over
I
and over.
know.
Sarah Menzies says you should put a tripod.
I know. And I use a monopod a lot too. Like, I'm not such a stickler, but I just can't. Yeah, I think editing is what changed my shooting, and editing something through. My first film that I shot since leaving Gonzaga was probably 5 years out of school, and I shot that. The imagery is beautiful, but there's zero story because I hadn't edited since Gonzaga. So I don't know what that footage is just collecting dust on a hard drive. I'd love to maybe pull it out now, but I think it would bring back some bad memories of editing. But I think that's just it. If you edit as well, your shooting style changes because you're constantly thinking about, like, mid, wide, tight. I don't know. I feel like I'm getting all of these variations that even with verite stuff, I can shoot now thinking about that and like listening and knowing, just paying attention and like knowing what am I really going to use in this edit. So even though I don't think of myself as a good editor, and I hire that out, like I've hired an editor for Afghan Cycles, which is really good so that I can keep my perspective. Right. Someone else can get the gray hairs and the ulcers, and I can just think, big, beautiful thoughts about what this film can be. So I think it's so good when you can hire people out for those kinds of things, especially when they're better than you and you're trying to make the best thing possible. But I also recommend edit as much as you can, just because it does make you a better shooter, makes you a better storyteller, because you know what elements you need. And even if you don't end up editing the piece, your editor will thank you.
Yeah. Yep. You have another question?
Yeah. So how did you get into the film industry, and
Yeah.
how did you start your own company?
Yeah. So yeah, it took me, I graduated '07, and I wasn't actually working in film until like 2010 or 2011, something like that. So it took me a few years to zigzag my way back to it. And when I did, actually, you didn't ask this, but I'm going to tell you. It was all the oil spill. I was doing environmental nonprofit work.
That's right.
Yeah, I was living in Portland, working for an environmental nonprofit. I actually was like on this path to get into like food scarcity issues. I don't know. I was like on a completely other path for a while there, which was great. But I went down to the Gulf representing the organization I was working for, and it was all like this storytelling mission. We were there collecting stories to then like pass on in different mediums. And there was a documentary filmmaker there, and it all came flooding back. Like, oh right, that's why I studied this. That's why I wanted to get into this, was to be able to tell stories visually and like give people a human being to connect with. At least for me, even on like the most doom and gloom thing, which is, you know, tar balls washing up on shore, like decimating, you know, the whole Gulf essentially. Like I wanted to like, I wish I'd had a camera to like interview the humans that I was meeting. What was your question? Just kidding. So I came back from that, quit my job, got into, I actually met another woman who had maybe a year or two on me in the business. We went into business together, and I feel really lucky that first year of me being in the industry, that I'd produced a film that she had shot, and it did great. It did great in the festivals. We'd done like our own sort of like DIY film tour with it out of an Airstream, which was crazy. And I mean, that was all her idea, but producing that was really cool. So yeah, I feel really humbled by the fact that my first year, like, it just all kind of worked, and that's not always the case. And it was also the outdoor industry, which was like where my interests were and where my lifestyle lived. I didn't even know that industry like existed. And so I just, through that first year, I met people, and yeah, was able to get make friends and with the right people that like that are still clients of mine. There's still some people I go to for like sponsorship on certain films, and then yeah, after a couple years, I'm losing track now, but I then just, like I said, I wanted it to be more than just Sarah Menzies girl with a camera and start my own thing, because I wanted it to build, you know. I guess
which, by the way, would be a great title for a company.
I know. I'm kind of like rethinking that now that I gain more confidence in it all. But that felt really, I have big dreams for this company, and I didn't want to, I just felt, I guess, to be honest, this is going to offend so many of my colleagues, but I felt really narcissistic, like building a company around my name and then having more and more people there. Like I wanted to have something that could be its own entity that maybe someday I walk away from. Maybe I don't. I don't know what'll happen, but.
I like titles. Why did you call it Let Media?
Yeah, that, so I kept coming back to this idea, like this visual. I'm a sailor. I grew up sailing, and I had this visual of like, you know, you work so hard. I didn't want it to feel like I'm just flapping in the wind, which is another sailing reference, I guess. I should be careful. But I had this image of like you work so hard to go in one direction, but no matter what, like the winds change and you're gonna have to like roll with it. So that's not to say that you like go with the flow or you just sort of bounce around like a pinball or something. That you can tell this isn't working anymore. Now we got to go that way, and you work really hard to get it going. So it's this whole like, you know, letting something happen naturally or letting go of what you thought it was going to be. And so at least from a documentary standpoint, that's kind of, for better or worse, my mentality with it. But again, it's something I feel very strongly. When I'm on production, I'm very, you know, I know what I want. But I also know that sometimes like that's not enough.
Plus, you just have to have a plan B, C, D, E.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
Reed, do you have a question?
Yeah, I was wondering, for looking ahead and for excuse me, future projects, what's your process going to be like for choosing that next story you want to tell?
Wow.
And is it going to be something that you personally just have a connection to and want to tell, or is it something maybe that's more of like a supply and demand, something that's going to, maybe put that on the table?
I was wondering if there'd be a senior asking me what's next. Because you guys must be getting bombarded with that question, right? I was wondering if one of you would ask me that. To be totally honest, working on a film in Afghanistan for 3 years has really gotten me thinking more about narratives and screenplays and things that I can have a little bit more control over. So that's something I want to get into. I've been slowly piecing some stuff together that maybe I'll try. I have no idea how to do that. I don't know how you fund something like that. I've never been on a set. I don't know how you do that, but. Excuse me, I have been on a set. But
You're welcome.
Can I just shoot my movie here? So that's one. I'd like to try that for sure. A lot of directors I look up to or whose work I like are in that world. But I don't know. I think documentary will always be a part of what I do. I just might have to go back and forth. But this is also my first feature-length film, so I've definitely been in over my head in a lot of ways, but by building this dream team and making sure that I'm like the worst one on the company, that I can bring people in that are better at all of this than I am, we're in a good position. But I also think it'll feel really nice to like maybe get out of that for a little bit, try something else, and then know that this is always something I can come back to. But it's going to be hard. You form attachments both to the subjects in the film and the story itself that I think the best way for me to keep working, I know a lot of directors will stop and feel like this lull of like, oh, what's next? Like, I don't want to jump into another feature length, but I don't know what to do next. And that's where I think maybe doing a narrative would feel like a nice break, but then I can always come back and do another documentary. And without forcing it, I don't want to just jump into the next one just because I feel like I should.
When do you think Afghan Cycles will be released?
Oh my God, you sound like my producers. I'm hoping for a rough cut by the spring. It's hard. I mean, this Nobel Peace Prize stuff is exciting. There's a few races coming up that the girls are excited about on the national team. It's really hard to know when to like pull the plug on it.
Yeah, that's a really, really interesting conundrum.
So I think I'm done with what I need in Afghanistan. But some of the girls are planning on coming here in the summer, so I want to have that. My goal is to have a rough cut by the spring, so that if we need any pickups or things that weren't said quite right, or we could actually get a couple sound bites, or things that feel like they're missing from the story. We could do that with them.
Could I invite them to Gonzaga?
Yeah,
if they come over here.
That'd be so cool.
That would be really, really cool. We got another question, Zach.
Yeah, so actually kind of building off of what Reed was just asking. So moving on to those things, even starting off with just this project alone requires you to forge those connections and stuff like that, especially to get to access to a country and to people that generally it's a war-torn country. It's not exactly easy to get over there to meet people who can help you out as you're making that production. So how do you make those connections to get access to something that's difficult to tell?
Yeah, that's a great question. One of the producers on the film also happens to run one of our partnering nonprofits. So she had a lot of great connections and ended up being more of like a line producer when we were in country, and opened up a lot of her contacts there. Our fixer, he kind of gets everything lined up for us every day, does the translating, security, everything. He's well connected, and I've been able to interview like governors and parliament members and stuff like that because he's just got their phones in his cell phone. He's pretty well connected, which is really awesome. And then there's definitely that mentality of like wanting to meet with the girls and their families before you roll the camera, and like the whole like 3 cups of tea mentality of like we need to like sit down and get to know each other before I put this thing in your face. And so, does that answer your question? It's sort of a mix of things. I mean, on this film, I went into it knowing that I knew nothing about Afghanistan and had 0 connections. But over the last 3 years, I've got a pretty cool network of people there. And gosh, the expat scene there is unreal, and a lot of those folks have been really helpful too. And then finding people that can help shoot stuff if I'm not there to shoot it. Yeah.
We're getting close to the end of our
I
time.
know. What happened?
I know. We were just having a great conversation, but one of the things you mentioned while we were speaking before we came out here was how influential one of my favorite classes in our program is.
Yes.
TV and social justice. Tell me about that. What did that do for you?
That's a funny class, and I've got to be careful because the professor is sitting here right now. It was one of those classes that sitting there, I knew this is really important for me, and I wish I took this like 3 years ago, because it landed in my final semester of senior year, and I was like way checked out. I'm sorry about that.
It's Lent. You're forgiven.
Yeah, thank you. But it was, so I was like conscious enough to realize like this is important and I need to be paying attention, but I was also thinking about what's coming up next. But it's a class I've referenced of like this, like that it was a formative class for me. And I think, I loved everything we did here, and our class was so special, and just as I'm sure you guys are to each other as well. And what you did for the program was so formative and wonderful. But I knew I wasn't going to get into news. I knew that this program, in some ways, limited me because I didn't want to get into to news broadcasting. So when that class came along, it made me I realized like there are more ways. This class taught me how to edit and how to shoot. How to ask questions. I think about what you taught me just in like how to conduct an interview. That stuff was really important to me, but I didn't quite know how to apply it. So yeah, TV and, was that right? TV and
social justice, Professor McGregor.
Yes, that was so important, and I wish I'd taken it earlier, because I think it would have also changed like what I wanted to do with the within what the shows that we did here. I would have probably pushed a little harder to like incorporate that style of storytelling in what we did here.
Okay.
Can I say that to you?
Oh, that's beautiful.
On air, can I say that?
The last word is yours.
Oh. All I can think of are jokes right now. I'm going to act somewhat professional and not say that. The last word. Give me some prompt here. What words? What? Give me a genre.
Especially for the 21st century storytellers.
Oh.
We're going to be the voices of tomorrow.
Yeah.
What would you like them to know that maybe took you a little while to learn?
I mean, you can do whatever you want. That sounds so cheesy, but once you learn how to film and you learn how to edit, you can do whatever you want. I think this is a really cool age for storytelling right now, and it's not just like in news, it's not just documentary. I love TV right now is so cool. Like the things that are being produced are so cool. And so I think having this skill set is, the opportunities are endless with the way everything is so accessible right now, and there is a demand for content. So just trust that once you kind of hone in on this and have a grasp for your style, there are so many ways to market it and get it out there. And so in a lot of ways, there's no excuse, to not be putting stuff out there. Because there's just countless websites and blogs that want content. There's countless distribution companies that are looking for the next new thing. I mean, there's just, the options are endless, and I'm so pumped to see what you guys do.
I'm so pumped that you came back. Whenever students come here, we really hope that we're going to help them figure out how to make a difference in the world with their God-given gifts, and Sarah Menzies is doing that. We're so proud of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
God bless you.
Thank you.
Oh, you're the best.